A billionaire sees a little girl begging in the rain with a baby. What he discovers leaves him in tears. But the truth? Even he wasn't ready for it. What started as an act of kindness uncovered a secret buried for 10 years. And a love story he thought was long forgotten. Sit back and enjoy this captivating tale of love, loss, and redemption. A story that proves sometimes the people we're meant to protect are the ones we never even knew we had. It was still early, but the city was already busy. Cars moved slowly through traffic. People walked fast with umbrellas, coats, and bags. The rain fell without stopping, soft but cold, like the sky was crying quietly. At the corner of a busy road, a little girl stood alone. She was just 9 years old. Her name was Sophia. She had no umbrella, no shoes. Her small dress was wet and stuck to her body. She held a baby in her arms, wrapped in an old, thin cloth. The baby was shaking, too cold to cry properly. His tiny body moved up and down as he breathed. Sophia was shivering. Her lips were purple from the cold. She tried to sing a quiet song just to help the baby sleep. "Don't cry. I'm here. We'll be okay." But her own voice was shaking too. Next to her was a small bag. Inside it was an empty feeding bottle and a piece of cloth that was already wet. Her back hurt from standing too long, but she stayed. She didn't want to leave. She didn't know where else to go. People walked past. Some looked at her with pity. Some looked away like they didn't see her. Others whispered and judged. 2 men stopped nearby and looked in her direction. "Who leaves a child to beg in the rain?" one asked. "Maybe it's a scam," the other replied. "These people now, they even rent babies to beg. It works better. More pity, more money." Sophia heard them. She didn't say anything. She just looked down at the baby's face, wiped off the water gently with her sleeve, and rocked him again. Then she stretched out her hand. Her voice was soft, tired, but full of pain. "Please, help me. Just small food for my baby brother. He hasn't eaten." No one stopped. One woman slowed down and looked at her, but then walked away quickly. A man in a fine suit walked past like she wasn't even there. Sophia slowly dropped her hand again. She held the baby tighter. Her stomach was empty. But that didn't matter. She could stay hungry. She just didn't want him to cry from hunger again. Not today. So she stood there, in the cold, in the rain, in the middle of a big city full of people, yet completely alone, hoping, just maybe, someone would care enough to stop. Across the road, a black SUV moved slowly through the traffic. Inside the car, a man sat in the back seat looking out through the tinted glass. His name was Henry Williams. He was 35 years old, a well-known businessman, a billionaire. People respected him. He built companies. He closed deals. His face was often on the covers of newspapers. Everyone knew his name, but few knew his heart. This morning, he was on his way to meet an important investor, someone powerful, someone foreign, someone who could help him expand his empire. He should have been focused. But as he looked out the window, something caught his eye. A small girl, barefoot, soaked in rain, holding a baby to her chest. She stood quietly at the roadside, shivering, with one hand stretched out. Henry blinked, sat up straighter. "Stop the car," he said suddenly. The driver looked back. "Sir, just stop." The driver pulled over. Henry opened the door, stepped out into the rain and began walking toward her, slowly. Something about the little girl unsettled him, deeply. The rain dripped from the edge of Henry's suit jacket as he crossed the street slowly. Cars passed behind him, splashing water as they moved, but he didn't notice. His eyes stayed on the little girl. Sophia didn't see him coming. She was too busy rocking the baby in her arms, trying to keep him calm. Her small lips moved, whispering something soft and tired, a lullaby only the baby could hear. Henry came closer and bent down gently, trying not to scare her. "Hey," he said quietly, "where are your parents?" Sophia didn't answer. She didn't even look up. Her hands stayed wrapped around the baby's small frame, trying to keep him warm. Henry waited. Then he spoke again, softer this time. "Can you hear me? Are you okay?" Slowly Sophia looked up. Her face was pale. Raindrops clung to her cheeks like tears. Her eyes were wide but not frightened, just tired. Too tired for fear. She looked at him for a long second, then said quietly but clearly, "They're gone." Henry felt something shift inside him. The way she said it, not with drama, not with begging, just the truth, plain, heavy, real. "I just want to find food," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "For my baby brother, that's all." Henry looked at the baby. He was so small, wrapped in soaked cloth, his fingers barely moving. Then he looked back at Sophia. Her thin arms, her wet dress, her bare feet. "Come with me," he said softly. Sophia pulled back a little. Her eyes narrowed, not from anger but fear. She had heard stories, rich men, strange men, child kidnappers. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know if this was a trap. Henry saw it in her eyes, the fear, the hesitation. "I won't hurt you," he added quickly. "You don't have to talk much. Just let me help." Sophia looked at the baby again. He let out a soft whimper. She looked back at the man in front of her, tall, quiet, with kind eyes. Something about his face, the way he spoke. It didn't feel dangerous. It felt safe. Still shaking, she gave a small nod. Henry reached out his hand, but didn't rush her. She took a slow step forward. They walked together to the car. The driver opened the door, confused, but said nothing. Inside the warm vehicle, Henry picked a clean towel from the seat and handed it to her. "Here," he said. "Use this for the baby." Sophia took it with both hands. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her fingers trembled as she wrapped the baby gently. She didn't even try to dry herself. All her care, all her focus was on the tiny child in her arms. Henry watched her in silence. This was not normal. No child her age should be this calm in the middle of such pain. Something was wrong, very wrong. But he said nothing, not yet. He just sat back and watched the storm outside the window continue to fall. The car moved slowly through the streets, wipers brushing away the rain. Sophia sat quietly in the back seat, still holding the baby close. Her small fingers clutched the towel Henry had given her. The warmth from the heater touched her skin, but she didn't relax. Her eyes stayed low. Her mind was far away. Henry looked at her from time to time but said nothing. He didn't want to rush her. She looked like someone who had been rushed all her life. Soon they pulled up in front of a quiet, cozy restaurant, clean and warm. "Let's eat," Henry said gently. Sophia hesitated for a second, then followed him inside. They sat at a corner table. The waiter brought food, a plate of warm rice and beans, a bottle of water, and some soft bread. Sophia stared at it. Then slowly she placed the baby on her lap, opened the towel, and dipped her fingers into the food. She didn't eat first. She fed him. One small pinch of mashed beans at a time, carefully placed into his tiny mouth. Henry watched quietly. He didn't interrupt. He had never seen anything like it. A child feeding another child with more care than most adults showed their own. When the baby finally slept full and warm, she picked up the spoon and began to eat. She didn't rush. She chewed slowly, as if each bite might disappear if she moved too fast. As she ate, tears began to fall from her eyes. Not loud tears, just soft ones, one by one. Henry reached for his napkin but stopped. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. So he let her be. When she was done, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked up at him. Her face was calm, but her eyes were older than they should be. Henry leaned forward a little. "What's your name?" "Sophia," she said quietly. "How old are you?" She held up 9 fingers. He nodded. "Sophia, can I ask you something?" She nodded once. "What happened to you?" Sophia looked down at the sleeping baby. She ran her fingers gently across his cheek, then began to speak. "My mama got sick," she said. "We were homeless. She was coughing, shaking." Henry's eyes narrowed slightly. "We had no money. She couldn't see a doctor. No one helped. She swallowed hard, fighting the memory. She died weeks ago." Henry didn't speak. Sophia continued, her voice low. "Before she died, she told me to run with the baby. She said people might hurt us if we stayed." Henry leaned in. "The baby?" Is he your brother? She nodded. My half-brother. His papa ran off when he found out she was pregnant. Henry looked at the baby again, so small, so innocent, sleeping in his sister's arms. He whispered, "And your father?" Sophia took a deep breath. Her voice dropped even lower. He died too. She didn't say how. She didn't need to. Her words fell heavy between them like bricks, the kind of truth too big for a child to carry, yet she carried it anyway. Henry sat back slowly. He didn't know what to say. His throat felt tight. He looked at this little girl, this child who had been surviving all alone, in the streets with a baby on her back, and not once had she asked for anything for herself. Only food for him. Only safety for him. He stared at her for a long moment, and something inside him changed. He glanced at his watch. His heart dropped. He had forgotten the time. His meeting, the one he was supposed to attend hours ago, was with a major investor from Dubai, someone he had waited weeks to see, someone who didn't like delays. But when he looked at Sophia, he couldn't imagine just walking away. She sat across from him, gently rocking the baby, her eyes still tired but calm now. Her clothes were still damp, but her grip on the child was steady. Henry stood up slowly. "I have to go somewhere," he said carefully. "Just for a short time." Sophia looked up. "I have a very important meeting, but I don't want to leave you alone like this." He turned to a middle-aged woman behind the counter, the restaurant manager. "Please," he said, pulling her aside. "Let her sit here. Give her anything she needs. I'll come back for her." The woman nodded kindly. "Of course, sir." Henry looked at Sophia again. "I'll be back soon," he said gently. "Please wait here for me." Sophia didn't say anything, but she nodded. Henry reached into his pocket, dropped a few bills on the counter, and rushed out. His driver opened the car door. They sped off into the street. Sophia sat for a while, holding the baby close, but something didn't feel right. Her fingers moved slowly across her chest. Then she froze. The necklace. It was gone. A small beaded pendant, nothing expensive, just old and handmade. It had belonged to her mother. Her mother had told her many times, "Keep this with you, always." It was the only thing she had left, the only piece of her mother she could still touch. She stood up quickly, heart racing. Maybe it fell outside. Or was it in the big car? Or near the place where she had first seen the man? She couldn't be sure, but she had to try. "I'll come back," she whispered to herself. "I just need to find it, just for a minute." She looked at the baby, still asleep in her arms, tightened the towel around him. Then she stepped outside, barefoot again, into the wet street, and walked away from the place she had just begun to feel safe. Meanwhile, the meeting ended later than Henry expected. He had rushed through the final minutes, distracted and restless, barely listening to the investor's closing remarks. As soon as the handshakes were done, he stepped outside, loosened his tie, and got into his car. "Take me back," he said to the driver. The restaurant. The rain had stopped completely now. The sky was still gray but dry. When they reached the restaurant, he stepped out quickly. He walked inside. The manager saw him and came forward. She wiped her hands on her apron. "Sir, welcome back." Henry didn't waste time. "Where's the girl?" The woman looked confused. "Girl? The one I left here. With the baby. She was sitting right there." "Oh, yes, the little one." She frowned. "She sat there quietly for a while, then I didn't see her again." Henry's heart dropped. "What do you mean you didn't see her again?" "I thought maybe you picked her up, or she left with someone you sent." "No." His voice was firm but quiet. "She was supposed to wait for me." He looked around, as if she might still be hiding in a corner. But the restaurant was small. There were no corners to hide in. He sat down at the same table, ran his hand through his hair. Maybe she left because she got scared. Maybe she didn't trust him after all. Or maybe... He leaned back and exhaled deeply. Maybe she lied. Was it all an act? The story, the tears, the baby. Could someone really be that good at pretending? He had seen people lie before, for money, for sympathy, for games. Maybe she was one of them. Maybe she had done this before with other strangers. But no, something didn't sit right. He remembered how she fed the baby before touching her own food, the way she wrapped the towel gently around him, the way she had said, "They're gone," with no drama, just truth. It didn't feel fake. It felt real. Henry sat there for a while, eyes on the door, waiting. But she never came. Eventually he stood up, thanked the manager, and walked out, slowly, heavily, like someone who had lost something they didn't understand yet. He got into the car, silent. As the vehicle pulled away, he turned once to look back at the restaurant. Still no sign of her. On the other side of town, Sophia walked as fast as she could, her bare feet splashing in small puddles, her arms wrapped tightly around baby James, who had begun to cry again. Her eyes scanned every corner, every gutter, every patch of ground. She searched near the place where she had stood earlier that morning. She asked a street cleaner if he had seen anything, a small necklace with beads and an old broken clasp, but he shook his head. Sophia's breathing grew heavier. Her chest hurt from running. Her legs were shaking. But she didn't stop. She walked up and down the sidewalk, through the same spots over and over, holding James with one hand, moving wet leaves and small trash with the other. "James," she whispered through her tears. "I lost it. I lost Mama's necklace." The little boy didn't understand. He just whimpered in her arms, his small head resting against her shoulder. Sophia sat down beside a dusty wall and wiped her face with the back of her hand. That necklace wasn't just a necklace. It was her mother's last gift, the last thing she had left. Her mother had once said, "Keep it with you always, Sophia. If anything ever happens to me, keep it close." And now it was gone. She had stayed out too long, searching. The sky had started to dim again. Suddenly she stood up. "The man," she whispered to herself. She turned and ran, carefully but fast, back to the restaurant. Maybe he was still there. Maybe he had waited. She reached the small building, breathing hard. Walked inside, eyes wide, looking around. But the chair was empty. The table was clean. The man had not come back. She ran to the counter. A different woman was standing there, younger, distracted, packing food in a plastic bag. "Excuse me," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "Please. The man who brought me here. Is he still around?" The woman looked confused. "Oh, sorry, my shift just started. The woman who was here before, she's gone." Sophia stood frozen for a second. Her hands shook. She stepped back slowly, holding James tighter. Then she turned away from the counter and walked outside. The baby was quiet now, resting on her chest. But Sophia wasn't. Tears poured from her eyes as she sat on the steps outside the restaurant. She rocked him gently and whispered, "I lost the only chance we had." She didn't even know the man's name. She didn't know where he lived. She didn't have his number, only the memory of his face and his kindness. She stood up again slowly, looked around. There was no sign of him anywhere. No big black car, no familiar voice. Just the empty street, wet ground, and fading light. "Maybe I'll never see him again," she whispered. And with the baby asleep in her arms, Sophia walked away, heartbroken, barefoot, and alone. The Williams mansion sat quietly on a small hill just outside the city. Wide glass windows, soft lights, and the hum of music playing gently in the background. It wasn't a party, just a quiet celebration. Amanda Williams, Henry's younger sister, had just returned home. She had spent the last 2 years abroad completing her master's degree. Now, at 28, she was finally back. The siblings sat on the balcony, a tray of fruit between them, the city lights blinking below. "I still can't believe you're done," Henry said, smiling. Amanda laughed. "Neither can I. London wasn't easy, but I survived." They clinked glasses, non-alcoholic drinks as always, and let the silence between them settle. Their father had passed when Amanda was still in secondary school. Their mother, the strong, proud woman who raised them alone afterward, had died 5 years ago. Amanda had left shortly after to study. Now she was home, and for a moment, things almost felt whole again. Almost. "I saw someone today," Henry said suddenly, staring into the night. Amanda looked at him. "Who?" "A little girl," he said softly, "with a baby, in the rain." Amanda tilted her head, half smiling. "Let me guess. You gave her food. A ride. Probably your jacket too." Henry gave her a look, but it wasn't angry. "You know you've always had that weakness," Amanda teased gently. "You're drawn to people who look like they have nothing." "Don't say that." Amanda blinked. "I was joking." "Well, don't," he said more firmly this time. "It reminds me of something I've been trying to forget." Amanda's smile faded. She didn't ask further. Instead, she leaned back and said softly, "You've always had a big heart, Henry. Don't let whatever happened in the past change that." Henry didn't answer. He just looked up at the sky, the memory of Sophia's small hands wrapped around the baby still fresh in his mind. Why did he care this much? Why couldn't he let it go? Back in the city, Sophia sat down at a dusty corner of the same street she had stood on. She had returned to the only place she knew. Her dress was still damp. Baby James was wrapped tightly against her chest. The restaurant was gone. The man was gone. The hope was gone. Now it was just her again. She held out her small hand as people walked past. Some looked, some didn't. No one stopped. She didn't speak much this time. Her voice was too tired. Her eyes were too red. But her heart kept whispering, maybe tomorrow. Maybe he'll come back. Just like that, days passed. But Henry Williams couldn't forget her. No matter how busy his schedule got, no matter how many meetings filled his calendar, Sophia stayed in his mind like a quiet voice that wouldn't go away. The image of her, standing in the rain, feeding the baby before herself, sitting quietly with tear-filled eyes, played over and over. He tried to move on. Tried to tell himself maybe she had made it up. Maybe she was just one of many beggars on the street with a sad story. But his heart didn't believe that. And the thought that it might be true, that she had told the truth, that she had waited for him and was now all alone again, began to trouble him deeply. She was just a little girl. And if everything she said was real, she was out there somewhere, still holding that baby, still sleeping in corners, still hoping someone would help. One morning, he stood by the window in his home, staring out at the city. Then he made a decision. "I need to know," he said out loud. Henry's car pulled up to the street where he had first seen her. It was early. The sun had barely risen. The ground was still damp from the night rain. A few shopkeepers were just beginning to open. A man was sweeping dust from in front of his kiosk. Henry stepped out and walked toward a nearby newspaper vendor, an older man with kind eyes. "Good morning, sir," Henry said politely. "Please, I'm looking for a little girl, about 9. She's always carrying a baby. Have you seen her?" The man looked up thoughtful. Then his face lit up. "That girl," he said. "She's been coming here every morning. She sits just there." He pointed to a quiet corner under a small wooden shade. Henry turned quickly and followed the direction the man had shown. And then he saw her. Sophia. She was sitting quietly in the corner, legs tucked under her. Her head was bowed, but her arms still cradled the baby, wrapped in the same towel he had given her. Her lips were moving, whispering something. Her eyes were red. Henry walked closer. She looked up slowly. The moment their eyes met, hers widened. And before she could speak, he crouched in front of her. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean to go. I waited, but I dropped my mama's necklace, and I went to find it. I thought I'd come back in time, but I didn't see it. And when I came back, you were gone." She looked down, ashamed. "I'm really sorry." Henry shook his head gently. "That doesn't matter," he said. "All that matters is that I found you again." Sophia blinked, trying to hold back fresh tears. Henry looked at her, her tired eyes, her trembling fingers, and the baby curled up against her chest. He took a slow breath. "Come," he said softly. "You're coming with me. This time. For good." The ride to the Williams mansion was quiet. Sophia sat in the back seat, her arms wrapped tightly around baby James, eyes staring out the window, trying to believe it was real. The baby slept peacefully, warm for the first time in days. Henry didn't say much during the drive. He glanced at her a few times but quickly looked away. There was something stirring in his chest, something he didn't understand, a strange connection, a weight, a question that kept forming but had no words yet. When they arrived, the guards opened the gates slowly. The black SUV rolled into the driveway. Sophia's eyes widened. She had never seen a place so big, so clean, so bright. Henry opened the car door and offered his hand again. She hesitated for a moment, then took it. Inside, a maid gently took baby James and carried him away to a warm, quiet room. Sophia followed, not wanting to be too far. Another woman, soft-spoken and dressed in white, guided her toward the guest bathroom. "You'll take a warm bath now," she said gently. "Then we'll bring you fresh clothes, okay?" Sophia nodded. Her hands were still shaking as she stepped into the water. It was hot, gentle. She felt the dirt and cold of the streets slowly wash off her skin. For the first time in a long time, she felt clean. Later, she came out in a fresh dress, plain but beautiful, and walked barefoot through the marble-floored hallway. A maid led her to a quiet room with light blue curtains and a soft bed. Her own room. She looked around slowly. No crowd, no noise, no sharp voices, just space and silence. Meanwhile, Henry stood downstairs. He took out his phone and dialed the kitchen. "Chef," he said, "there's a girl in the guest room."
"And a baby?" "Yes, sir." "Make sure they eat well," he said. "No delays, no mistakes." "Understood, sir." After the call, Henry walked into his study and sat down. He stared out the window for a long time. He had done this sort of thing before, helped strangers, paid for surgeries, donated to shelters, but this time felt different. This girl, that baby, the way she looked at him. Why did he care so much? Why did it feel like her pain was reaching somewhere deeper inside him, a place he had locked away for years? He didn't know. So he kept his distance. He didn't go up to check on her. Didn't ask too many questions. He just waited downstairs, in silence, wondering why this little girl mattered more than he could explain. Days passed. Sophia was still quiet, still careful. But slowly, something in her began to shift. She now slept in a warm bed, ate 3 full meals a day. Baby James was seen by private doctors, given vitamins and soft new clothes. The color returned to his cheeks. Sophia still didn't smile much, but she started to speak a little more. She whispered soft thank yous when the maid brought her food. She gently helped one of the cleaners pick up a dropped broom. She asked where she could wash her towel by herself. Everyone in the house noticed her small kindnesses. But Henry noticed something else. Something deeper. He would catch himself staring at her sometimes, not out of worry, not even curiosity, but something harder to explain. It wasn't just that she was brave or gentle, it was her face. The shape of her chin, the quiet way she spoke, even the way she moved her hands when nervous. She reminded him of someone he had not seen in a very long time. Late one evening, he stood by the hallway window upstairs, arms crossed, watching the sky grow dim. Amanda walked up beside him, holding a mug of tea. "You've been standing there forever," she said lightly. Henry didn't look at her. "Does Sophia look familiar to you?" Amanda blinked. "Familiar? She reminds me of someone," he said softly. Amanda leaned against the wall. "Who?" There was a pause. Then Henry said quietly, "Miriam." Amanda went still. She stared down at her tea, then looked back up. "Miriam," she said, almost in a whisper. "You mean the maid?" Henry nodded once. Amanda tried to smile. "You're probably overthinking." But her voice didn't sound sure anymore, and something in her face shifted, just slightly, like a wall trying not to fall. Henry looked at her closely.
but said nothing more. The morning sun was just beginning to peek through the windows of the Williams mansion when Henry stepped outside for some fresh air. The compound was quiet, peaceful, but his mind was far from calm. He hadn't slept well. Too many thoughts, too many questions. He was still standing near the driveway when his driver approached him, holding something small in a cloth napkin. "Sir," the man said gently, "we found this while cleaning the car. It was stuck under the back seat." Henry raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" The driver opened the cloth slowly, and there it was. A necklace. Old, simple. A string of dull gold beads faded from time. The pendant was heart-shaped, scratched at the edges but still whole. Henry froze. His chest tightened. He reached out slowly, as if touching a ghost. He knew this necklace. It wasn't just any necklace. It was hers. A love token he had once given to Miriam, the girl he had loved many years ago, quietly, secretly, deeply. His hand trembled as he picked it up. For a moment, everything around him went silent. How did this get in my car? Then a memory returned, clear, sharp, and sudden. Sophia, her fingers searching her chest, her panicked voice whispering, "I lost my mama's necklace." Henry's heart began to race. Could it be? Was Miriam Sophia's mother? He turned and rushed back into the house. That same afternoon, he called in a private investigator, someone he had trusted for years. "I need to find out everything about a woman named Miriam," he said. "She was once a maid in my family home, years ago. I need to know where she went, what happened to her, and if she had a child." The man nodded. "Give me some time." The report came 2 days later, and it shattered everything Henry thought he knew. The investigator's voice was calm, but the words hit like bricks. "Yes, sir. Her name was Miriam Okoye. She worked in your home for almost 3 years. According to what we found, she had a daughter named Sophia 9 years ago." Henry sat down slowly. "After she left this house, she stayed briefly with a cousin," the man continued, "but then dropped off the radar. She later had another child, a boy. The man who fathered that baby abandoned her not long after." The final line hit the hardest. "Miriam died 2 months ago, sir. Illness. No proper shelter, no treatment, likely caused by hunger and exposure." Henry covered his mouth, sat back, and closed his eyes. For years, he had buried that chapter of his life. He and Miriam had fallen in love quietly, away from the eyes of the world. She had been kind, strong, and full of dreams. He had promised her he would fight for her, even when his mother disapproved. But then she left the house, stopped answering his calls, disappeared. He had waited. He had searched, at first. Then, angry and heartbroken, he gave up, convinced she had moved on, convinced she had stopped loving him. Now, hearing that she had suffered and died, tore something open in him, something he didn't know was still alive. A tear slipped down his cheek before he could stop it. He wiped it quickly, but the ache remained. Still, one question refused to leave his mind. One piece wasn't in the files. Who was Sophia's father? Was it the man Miriam met after? Or could it be him? Could Miriam have carried his child and raised her alone without ever telling him? Why? Why wouldn't she reach out? Why let Sophia grow up in such pain? The questions clung to him like fog, heavy, unshakable. Just then, Amanda walked into the room and paused in the doorway. She saw him sitting there, head low, the necklace in his hand, his face lost in thought. She stepped forward slowly. "Henry." But he didn't answer, because somewhere deep in his heart a truth was waking up, and it refused to let him go. Amanda turned and walked away quietly. The necklace sat on Henry's desk like a forgotten truth, now returned to demand answers. He turned it over in his hands again and again, still struggling to believe it had made its way back to him. Through a child. Through Sophia, the quiet girl with big, tired eyes and the same softness in her voice that Miriam once had. The same steady patience, the same silent strength. Later that evening, Henry found Amanda in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "I know who Sophia's mother is," he said suddenly. Amanda looked up, Her face stayed calm, but her fingers froze over the screen. "It's Miriam," Henry said. "Our old maid." Amanda gave a slow nod. "You're sure?" "I found the necklace I gave her. The one she used to wear every day. It was under the car seat." Amanda stood. "Okay. But even if she's Miriam's daughter, that doesn't mean—" Henry stepped closer. "Yes, I know what you are trying to say, but she could also be mine." Amanda didn't speak right away. Then she shook her head quickly. "I'm not sure about that, Henry." She never said she was pregnant, but her voice was too flat. And her eyes didn't meet his. Henry studied her face carefully. "You sure about that?" "I'm sure," she said again, but this time her voice cracked, just slightly. He didn't press further. He just turned away, because a part of him already knew. Later that night, Henry sat alone in his study. He thought of Sophia's soft voice at the restaurant that day. "My father, he died too." She had said it so simply, so quietly, with no drama. What if someone had told her that? He rubbed his forehead, sighing deeply. He thought about timelines. He and Miriam had lost contact almost 10 years ago. Sophia looked about 9. The dates matched. And he needed to know. He couldn't walk up to her now and ask. What if he was wrong? He wouldn't dare confuse or hurt her. So he called his private doctor. "I need a discreet DNA test," he said. "Use the girl's hairbrush, and something from me. No one can know, not yet." The results came 3 days later. He sat in silence as the doctor read them, then handed him the papers. Henry looked at the name printed clearly on the page. Sophia Okoye, biological daughter of Henry Williams. His vision blurred. He gripped the edge of the desk and lowered his head. He had a daughter. A daughter who had grown up in the cold, on the streets. A daughter who had once belonged to someone he loved, someone he had promised to protect. And he had failed. All these years he thought Miriam had left him, ignored his calls, moved on with her life. But now it didn't feel so clear. Now he wondered, had she even received those messages? Had someone stopped her? Had someone made her disappear from his life? On purpose? His thoughts spiraled. And slowly, painfully, a new kind of guilt crept in. Not just for losing her, but for never finding her. Later that afternoon, Henry stormed into the living room. It was quiet. Soft music played from a speaker in the corner, but neither of them noticed it. The air between Henry and Amanda felt heavy, like it was waiting to break. Henry stood in front of her, the DNA envelope in his hand. His fingers shook slightly as he passed it to her. Amanda opened it, still unaware of what was coming. But the moment her eyes landed on the result, her grip loosened. The glass cup in her other hand slipped from her fingers. It hit the tiled floor and shattered, sharp edges scattering across the marble like 100 truths at once. Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. She couldn't speak. Henry's voice was quiet, hoarse. "She's mine." Amanda looked at the paper again, then at her brother, then back at the paper. Her legs gave way. She sat down on the edge of the sofa, still holding the envelope like it was something burning. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." Tears filled her eyes as something deep inside her began to tremble, and then she broke. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "Henry, I swear I didn't know she was pregnant." Henry sat down across from her, eyes locked onto hers. He didn't speak, but his curiosity was more than obvious. "I didn't know then," Amanda continued, "but I think I do now." Henry's brows furrowed. Amanda looked at him with red, swollen eyes. "It's been such a long time. About 10 years ago you didn't know, but Miriam came to the house a few weeks after she left. She had that fight with Mom." Henry stood stunned. "She was shouting," Amanda whispered. "But I wasn't allowed in the room. I just remember hearing Mom say something about ruining the family name and taking care of it before it becomes shameful." She paused, choking back a sob. "Mom threw money at her, Henry. I remember that. Told her to take care of it. I didn't understand what it meant then. I was just confused. I thought maybe it was about her wages, or that she stole something. Her voice cracked completely. But now I know. It was the pregnancy. Miriam must have told her that she was carrying your child. Henry sat still, frozen. After that fight, Amanda said, wiping her face, Miriam left the house crying, but she didn't take the money. She left it right there on the stairs. I saw it when I came down later. Henry closed his eyes. Everything started to make sense. The unanswered calls, the sudden silence, the way Miriam vanished from his life without a word. She hadn't abandoned him. She had been pushed out. Amanda leaned forward, grabbing his hand. I'm so sorry, Henry. I thought Mum was doing what was best for you. I thought maybe Miriam had tried to trap you, or lied to you. That's what Mum made me believe. Henry didn't respond. He couldn't. His throat was tight, his hands clenched. Tears streamed silently down his face, not like a man ashamed of crying, but like a man who had lost something. Twice. The woman he loved, and the years with the daughter he never knew he had. And now, she was gone, buried, forgotten by a world that had judged her too quickly. He broke down, not as a billionaire, but as a broken man, hands shaking, shoulders trembling, heart completely undone. Amanda moved to his side and held him as he wept, no longer trying to explain or fix it. She just held her brother while everything inside him shattered. And outside the mansion, the world kept spinning. But inside Henry Williams, everything had changed forever. Upstairs in one of the guest rooms, Sophia sat cross-legged on a soft bed watching baby James sleep peacefully beside her. The lights were low. The curtains gently swayed with the breeze. The air was warm, not just because of the room, but because of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. James had stopped coughing. His cheeks were fuller. His fingers no longer curled from cold. She tucked the blanket around him and sat there in silence, hands folded on her lap. They had food now. Clean clothes, a place to rest their heads, and it was better than she had seen in her whole life. They had more than she ever imagined. And yet, a quiet worry still lingered in her chest. She thought about Mr. Henry, how he looked at her, how he spoke to her, how he told the staff to care for her and James. She didn't understand why someone like him would be kind to someone like her, but she was thankful. Still, the fear stayed. What if it doesn't last? What if tomorrow he takes us to an orphanage? The thought made her stomach tighten. She didn't want to go to a place with too many strangers. She didn't want to be separated from James. And strangely, she didn't want to be far from Mr. Henry either. There was something warm about him. Whenever he smiled at her, even just a little, her heart felt lighter, like the sun was returning after a long night. She looked at the door, then at the sleeping baby, then up at the ceiling. Maybe I'll talk to him tomorrow, she thought. I'll beg him not to send us away. I'll tell him I can help around the house. We won't be a burden. We'll be good. Her eyes fluttered closed, and slowly, with that quiet promise to herself, Sophia drifted off to sleep. Down the hallway, Henry stood by the door to her room. He had been pacing for nearly an hour, telling himself to wait till morning, to give her rest, but he couldn't. Not after everything he had learned. He turned the knob slowly and pushed the door open. Soft lamplight spilled across the floor, and there she was, fast asleep, one hand resting gently on baby James's back, the other curled under her cheek. Henry walked in quietly. He stood by the edge of the bed, his heart heavier than it had ever been. He looked at her face, peaceful now, but he had seen what that face looked like in pain. In the rain, on the street, begging, alone. His eyes filled again. How could I not have known? He whispered to himself. How could he have lived all these years without knowing that this was his daughter? That she had been out there, suffering, while he lived behind gates and walls. He knelt beside the bed. I'm sorry, he whispered again. I'm so sorry. James stirred lightly, but didn't wake. Henry placed a hand gently over Sophia's blanket. He closed his eyes. "I couldn't save your mother," he whispered, "but I'll honor her. With you." He looked from Sophia to the baby, innocent, helpless, but now, home. "I'll raise you both like royalty," he said softly, "not because I feel guilty, but because I love you. Because it was time to right every wrong." The sunlight touched the curtains gently as morning arrived at the Williams mansion. Birds chirped outside. The air felt clean, fresh, as if the world had pressed a reset button overnight. Sophia sat up slowly in bed, rubbing her eyes. James was still sleeping, breathing quietly, his small hands curled under his chin. She turned and looked at the door. Today she had made a decision. She would talk to Mr. Henry. She would thank him for everything, and she would ask, with all the courage she had, not to be sent away. If he wanted, she could work, clean, wash dishes, carry bags, anything. Just don't chase them out of the house. She dressed quietly and walked down the hallway, her little heart pounding in her chest. When she saw Henry in the study, she paused. He was standing by the window, back to her, holding something in his hand, something small and golden. She opened her mouth to speak, but he turned before she could. "Sophia," he said softly. She froze, then nodded. "Good morning, sir." He looked at her for a moment. His voice was low, careful, almost afraid of the answer. "Your mother, did she ever mention a man named Henry Williams?" Sophia blinked, then slowly nodded. "Only once," she said. "She said he was my real father, but she told me never to look for him." Henry's breath caught in his throat. "She said he had a new life." The silence that followed was like the sky holding its breath. Henry stepped forward, eyes filling again. His voice cracked. "All this time," he whispered, "you were standing in the rain, begging, and I never knew." His hands shook. He thought about Miriam, her soft laughter, her quiet strength, the way she used to sing while folding clothes, the way she used to say, "I'll never bring shame to your name." She hadn't walked away. She had tried to protect him. She had carried the burden alone, all these years. He dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around Sophia. "Welcome home, my daughter." She didn't know what to do at first, but slowly, she held him back. "I didn't leave you," he said through tears. "I just didn't know, but I'll never leave again." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the necklace, the one that had once been Miriam's, the one she had lost, that had somehow made its way home. He placed it gently into Sophia's hand. "This is yours now," he said. "From your mother. She would want you to have it." Sophia stared at it. She touched it to her chest, nodded slowly and held it tight. Over the next few weeks, life began to bloom again. James was healthier than ever. Doctors said he was responding well to food and warmth. He giggled when Sophia played with him, and sometimes even reached for Henry when he entered the room. Amanda, once unsure, now visited their room daily. She brought Sophia books, sat with her while she learned to write her name. They peeled oranges together on the balcony, and for the first time Amanda said it out loud. "She reminds me of Mum, and of you too." Sophia smiled. She had a family now. Not a perfect one, but a real one. Healing had begun. And even though grief still lived in the walls, love was building something stronger. The air was soft that afternoon at the Williams mansion. The garden was in bloom, and the sound of baby James's laughter echoed from the garden where Sophia sat playing peekaboo with him under the shade of an umbrella. Inside, Henry was finishing some paperwork in his study when the gate buzzer rang. A few minutes later, one of the guards knocked lightly. "Sir," he said, "there's a woman asking to see you. Says her name is Nora. Claims she's related to the baby." Henry's brows pulled together. "Let her in." He stood and walked to the sitting room, unsure of what to expect. Moments later, the woman stepped in. She was in her mid-30s, dressed simply, her eyes tired but kind. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a worn purse. "Good afternoon," she said softly. "My name is Nora. I've been looking for my nephew for months."
Henry's voice was gentle. You mean James? She nodded quickly, her eyes already glassy. Yes, his father, Elijah, was my brother. After he died, I tried to find the woman he left behind, but nobody would tell me where she went. Henry's chest tightened. He gestured for her to sit. She sat down slowly and wiped her face with a small handkerchief.
I only just found out that Miriam passed. No one told me. I didn't even know she had another child. Henry nodded quietly. Miriam was she was very dear to me. Nora covered her mouth. And the children? Are they okay? They're more than okay, Henry said, his voice steady. They're home. Just then, Sophia walked in, holding James. She paused when she saw the unfamiliar woman. Nora stood quickly, unable to stop the tears. Oh my God. He looks just like Elijah did when he was little. Sophia walked forward slowly, sensing something gentle in the woman. Nora touched James's cheek and broke down. Thank you. Thank you for keeping him safe. Henry watched them all, heart full. Then he stepped forward. I have something to ask, he said softly. I know I'm not his blood, but James, he's family now. To me, to Sophia. I would like to raise him fully, legally, as my own son. Nora looked up in surprise. But there was no fear in her eyes, no resistance, only peace. You want to adopt him? She asked. Henry nodded. Only if you agree. I want him to have everything he needs. Love, care, protection. I want them to grow up together, as siblings, as family. Nora let out a shaky breath, then smiled through her tears. Elijah would have wanted that, she whispered. He was a good man. Just lost his way near the end. She walked to Sophia and gently stroked her hair. You've done well, little one. Then she looked at Henry. Please, take care of them. And if it's all right, I'd love to visit once in a while. Of course, Henry said. Your family too. And in that quiet room filled with second chances, a broken family found one more piece of healing, not just through blood, but through love. And just like that, in less than a month, the paperwork was signed. Stamped, complete. Baby James, once just a fragile bundle in the arms of a lost little girl, was now officially James Williams, son of one of the most powerful men in the country, and little brother to Sophia. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were home. Henry held James proudly as he posed for a quiet photo in the family garden. Sophia stood beside them in a cream dress with soft lace at the hem, holding the necklace that had once belonged to her mother. It rested just above her heart now. She never took it off. Weeks later, the gates of the Miriam Foundation for Homeless Mothers and Children swung open for the very first time. It was a dream Henry had begun building the moment he learned the truth. A place where no child would sleep in the cold again. A place where no woman would be turned away because she was poor or alone. The mansion lawn had been transformed into a beautiful launch venue. Journalists gathered, chairs filled. A white stage stood under a canopy of soft lights and flowers. Sophia stood on that stage in a simple white dress. James, now stronger and playful, babbled beside her in Henry's arms, giggling and clapping as if he knew this was his moment too. Henry stepped up to the microphone. He looked out over the quiet crowd. Then down at the girl who had once stood in the rain, begging not for herself, but for the baby in her arms. His voice was calm, but strong. I thought I had everything, he said, until a little girl in the rain taught me what it means to truly love. The audience fell silent. A few people wiped their eyes. Henry smiled gently. Then he looked out across the crowd and added, Life doesn't always follow the path we expect. Sometimes the greatest blessings come in the middle of a storm, wrapped in nothing but tears, hope, and the smallest, outstretched hand. And in that moment, the crowd stood and clapped, not for the billionaire, but for the little girl who had reminded them all what love really meant.